Elizabeth Warren thought she'd landed a knockout blow on national TV, but Karoline Leavitt didn't fight back with words. She responded with something far more powerful, and it left Warren scrambling. "You don't actually believe that's a real solution, do you, Ms. Leavitt?" Elizabeth Warren said. Her voice edged with the seasoned bite of a senator who'd sparred on bigger stages. Her eyes locked onto Karoline Leavitt across the glossy CNN roundtable desk, a faint smirk earning scattered applause from the DC studio audience. The moderator, a veteran journalist, adjusted her glasses, sensing a shift. But Warren wasn't done. "Because if that's the best the White House has, I'm not sure what you're bringing to this administration." For a moment, the room held its breath. Cameras zoomed in, producers in the control booth silently prayed for a reaction, and political X lit up with clips. Karoline, at 27, the youngest White House press secretary in history, blinked once, sat back, and smiled. Not the forced grin of a politician cornered, but a genuine steady curve that felt just shy of amused. "I bring solutions," she said quietly, her New Hampshire accent cutting through the studio's hum. "Go on, Senator." Warren seized the moment, tossing out a rehearsed litany of half-baked statistics and buzzwords, rural healthcare mismanagement, administrative fluff, aimed at painting Karoline as an inexperienced mouthpiece, a young appointee out of her depth. The audience leaned in, expecting a fiery retort, but Karoline didn't take the bait. She let Warren talk, her silence not cowardice but calculation. She'd learned early, from small-town roots to cutthroat DC, that when someone tries to humiliate you in public, the worst thing you can do is give them the spectacle they crave. You listen, you wait, and when the time comes, you deliver something so clear it makes their noise feel foolish. The round table went viral, mostly for Warren's confidence. She strode off the stage, her team already drafting posts, convinced she'd buried the press secretary. She tweeted a clip before reaching the green room: "When you bring experience, and they bring platitudes." Senate v's spin. Karoline, meanwhile, slipped into the White House press office, unclipped her mic, and sat at a cluttered desk. Her aide, Rachel, a sharp 24-year-old who'd followed her from the 2024 campaign, lingered by the door, scrolling X. "She thinks she owned you," Rachel said, exasperation creeping into her voice. "She did what she needed to do," Karoline replied, opening her laptop. "Doesn't mean I didn't." Rachel raised a brow. "You barely pushed back." Karoline's eyes flicked up. "We're not playing her game." Later that evening, as Karoline boarded a red-eye to Ohio for a rural healthcare roundtable she'd promised to attend weeks earlier, the headlines were split. Some praised Warren's masterclass in takedowns. Others noted Karoline's calm unnerved the room. One MSNBC pundit remarked, "She didn't flinch. It's like she was waiting for something." She was. On the plane, Karoline opened her laptop, not to draft a rebuttal, but to finalize a healthcare reform proposal she'd been refining for months with White House advisors. It tackled rural hospital closures, insurance access gaps, and bureaucratic delays built on data, provider testimonies, and community input from towns like those she'd grown up in. Warren's debate jab, meant to expose Karoline's inexperience, had targeted the very issue she'd spent her first months in office researching. She didn't need to fight back on air. She needed to finish what she'd started. Karoline clicked through the document, highlighting lines, rewording a funding breakdown, data sets, footnotes, testimonies from rural nurses, even a cost projection, everything verified, everything airtight. As the plane began its descent into Columbus, Rachel leaned over. "What are you doing?" Karoline glanced at her, finishing the conversation she thought she won. While Warren slept soundly in her Georgetown townhouse, replaying her performance, Karoline was about to shift the spotlight in a way no one expected. The DC hotel room was modest, clean, functional, with beige carpeting and a single firm pillow. Caroline slipped off her heels, walked to the desk, and opened her laptop again. Outside, the city was winding down, but in her mind, everything was accelerating. Warren's tone, the smugness, the moderator's subtle nod to the senator's experience, replayed in fragments, not because they stung, but because they revealed something useful. Warren had no plan, just posturing. Caroline's fingers moved steadily across the keyboard. She wasn't writing to win points. She was building an argument no camera could interrupt. A healthcare reform proposal that would hit harder than a viral clip. Rachel walked in with a coffee and a bagel. "You haven't eaten since yesterday," she said, dropping the bag onto the table. "They're saying you got steamrolled." Caroline barely looked up. "Let them." Rachel hesitated. "X is all Warren. They're calling it a knockout." Caroline stopped typing, leaning back. "A good soundbite dies in a day. Policy lives longer." The TV played softly in the background, some pundit panel rehashing Warren's line. Her face flashed across the screen, confident and sharp, parroting her tweeted quip, "It's easy to talk big when you have no real record." Caroline muted it with the remote. "I have a record," she said, more to herself than Rachel. "They just haven't read it yet." On her screen sat the final draft of her proposal. It wasn't flashy, it was gritty, detailed, impossible to dismiss. It tackled rural healthcare access, not with theories, but with budgets, timelines, and structural reform. It called out federal delays, state-level bottlenecks, and real-world consequences, hospitals shuttered, families driving hours for care. It even noted a Senate vote Warren had cast against rural funding in 2019, before she pivoted to broader healthcare rhetoric. Caroline had the receipts. She wasn't trying to embarrass Warren. That was the difference. She wasn't interested in tearing someone down to climb higher. This was about the work, the people behind the statistics. Families like Tom, a farmer in Iowa who lost his local clinic to budget cuts, or Maria, a teacher in Kentucky sharing one doctor with 3,000 others. Warren had made it sound simple, just fund it. Caroline knew better. She'd met the hard workers, seen the gaps. She closed the laptop. "It's ready," she said quietly. Rachel turned to her. "You want to wait? Let the noise die down?" "No," Caroline said. "I want them to see what preparation looks like." At 5 a.m., she emailed the proposal to her White House team. At 6, her comms team received a draft brief, no press conference, no podium, just a release titled "A Plan for America's Heartland." By 6:30 it was out. As DC woke, the email hit inboxes from Capitol Hill to rural advocacy groups. Most skipped it at first, buried under newsletters and briefings. But by 7:50, a reporter at the Columbus Dispatch opened it. 10 minutes later, an editor at the Kansas City Star did the same. Just after 8, a producer at Morning Joe forwarded it to her boss with a single line. "You'll want to read this." What followed wasn't dramatic. No red banners, no breaking news music, just a quiet avalanche of attention, one forwarded email at a time. Caroline's proposal didn't scream, it explained. It walked through hospital closure stats, insurance access gaps, and solutions grounded in real communities. It pointed out patterns, contradictions, and, without naming names, made Warren's roundtable comments look painfully shallow. Reporters started calling. Not just Caroline's team, but policy analysts, rural advocates, even conservative think tanks. They weren't angry. They were curious. By 9 a.m., the hashtags flipped. What had been Dr. Warren wins the night before turned into Dr. Leavitt plan and Juck real solutions. Warren's communications director, Marcus, read the summary out loud in their Senate office. "She had this in the works since when?" he asked. "No idea," Warren said, scrolling X, her lips tight. "But it looks like people think it's brilliant." Marcus looked up. "It is brilliant, and it calls you out, not directly, but enough that folks are connecting the dots." Warren sat back. "This was staged." "No," Marcus said. "This was strategy." By noon, Politico published a piece titled, "Leavitt's Healthcare Plan Puts Pressure on Senate Lines." The subhead read, "A roundtable jab turns into a policy lesson." One paragraph went viral. Warren may have won the applause, but Leavitt did the homework. Her plan doesn't just expose gaps in rural healthcare, it leaves little room for spin. If last night was a fight, this morning Karoline Leavitt walked out holding the blueprint. Meanwhile, Karoline sat in the back seat of a black SUV, headed toward a rural clinic in Chillicothe, Ohio. The media buzz hadn't hit her directly yet. She hadn't turned on the TV, hadn't read the articles. She didn't need to. Rachel's phone wouldn't stop vibrating. She finally put it on airplane mode, just to breathe. "Why aren't we saying anything?" she asked, glancing at Karoline. "Because they're saying it for us," Karoline replied, reviewing clinic funding forms. At the clinic, Karoline met with nurses and case managers. She took off her blazer, rolled up her sleeves, and asked about Medicaid delays. Cameras arrived midway through, but she didn't adjust. She was already in it, answering questions, reviewing patient intake processes. A reporter called out as she left the building, "Ms. Leavitt, is this visit a media strategy to push your new plan?" She didn't stop walking. "I've been meeting clinics since the campaign," she said, matter of fact. "You're just noticing now." Inside the press van, someone whispered, "She's not reacting, she's working." The headlines kept coming. Leavitt's quiet counterpunch, MSNBC. A missed swing, Leavitt's heavy hit, Vox. How to win without shouting, NPR. What stunned political insiders wasn't just the content of Karoline's plan. It was the timing. She hadn't waited for Warren to strike. She'd built the answer already. By evening, 2 moderate Democrats, including Reps. Laura Chen from Minnesota, and 1 independent senator, said they were open to discussion on the Leavitt plan. It wasn't a sweeping endorsement, but it was movement. Warren, booked for 3 more interviews, faced a new script. Every producer had a copy of Karoline's plan. Every segment started with, "Let's talk about the healthcare proposal that's got everyone buzzing." Warren stuck to her talking points: experience, systemic reform, her decades in policy. But each time it felt hollower, like arguing with someone who wasn't in the room. Because she didn't need to be. While Warren tried to spin the spotlight back, Karoline had already moved on, and the country was following her lead. Warren knew how to handle a hit, or thought she did. By the next morning, she'd been through makeup, mic check, and a full team briefing. Her first interview was on a progressive podcast with a loyal audience, Safe Ground. The host opened with, "Looks like the White House is making noise again. What's your response to Leavitt's healthcare memo?" Warren smiled, right on cue. "It's a flashy document, sure, but healthcare is complex. You can't just throw words on paper and pretend it's a plan." Except that's not what Karoline had done, and Warren knew it. Still, she leaned in. "I've looked at this so-called proposal. It's got ambition, I'll give her that, but the math doesn't add up." What she didn't realize was that fact-checkers were already working. By her second interview, Reuters had posted a line-by-line breakdown confirming the accuracy of Karoline's projections. The headline was blunt: "Leavitt's plan checks out. Warren's critique does not." Her phone buzzed on set. Marcus texting, "Stop saying the math is wrong. It's not. People are noticing." Warren stared at the message. She hadn't expected it to spiral this fast. By late afternoon, she'd been asked twice if she planned to propose an alternative. She dodged both times, deflecting with talking points about long-term vision and bipartisan talks. But something was shifting. The buzzwords weren't landing like they used to. That evening, PBS NewsHour ran a 6-minute segment unpacking Karoline's plan, featuring real people, not politicians. A farmer in Iowa, a teacher in Kentucky, a grandmother in Nebraska caring for grandkids after their parents lost coverage. One clip showed a woman in tears. "This plan feels like somebody finally listened." The next morning, a political strategist who'd advised Warren's 2020 campaign appeared on Morning Joe. "I'll be honest," he said. Karoline Leavitt played this masterfully. She didn't argue on stage, didn't insult. She let the work speak, and it's airtight. Even the host nodded. We're not used to that in politics. Restraint with results. Warren watched the segment in silence, arms crossed, jaw tight. Marcus broke the quiet. We could pivot, focus on taxes or education. No, Warren said. She ambushed us with this plan. We're not pivoting, we're pushing back. It's not landing, Marcus said, then walked out, texting a colleague. She's spiraling. Won't let it go. Meanwhile, Karoline stayed out of the spotlight. She declined interview requests, skipped panels. Her team released one statement: we welcome critiques, as long as they come with real alternatives. This isn't about who talks louder, it's about who does the work. The quote went viral. Even a conservative strategist retweeted it with, hard to argue with that. But it wasn't just the media shifting, it was the public. Constituents emailed Warren's office in droves, not yelling, not threatening, just asking, have you read Leavitt's plan? Do you support it? If not, what's yours? Some shared stories, others demanded answers. Warren issued a statement that afternoon, trying to sound firm. We're reviewing all proposals and will continue to support smart, targeted solutions for American families. It was vague, it said nothing, and for the first time, her base noticed. On X, comments turned skeptical. Even her allies on progressive radio asked, where's her counterplan? She had none. While Warren scrambled, Karoline's silence grew louder than any microphone, and the nation was starting to listen. By midweek, the tone in Washington had changed. Karoline Leavitt was no longer the young press secretary to watch. She was the conversation. Her healthcare plan took on a life of its own. Policy wonks dissected it. Rural advocacy groups rallied around it. Congressional offices that once ignored her calls now scheduled meetings. Inside the White House briefing room, Karoline sat quietly during a healthcare discussion. The room packed, not for drama, but for details. She didn't grandstand or lean into theater. In my home state, she began, I met farmers who drive 2 hours for a checkup. I met teachers paying out of pocket for basic meds because the nearest hospital closed. This plan isn't perfect, but it's a start. If anyone here thinks we don't need a start, I invite you to visit those towns. The room was quiet, respectfully quiet. Reporter Laura Chen, a moderate Democrat with a history of dodging healthcare votes, leaned into her mic after Karoline finished. I read every page of this plan, she said. I didn't expect to be convinced, but I was. It's serious and it's overdue. Karoline nodded once. The exchange hit X in seconds. Chen says she's convinced by Leavitt's plan. This is big. Outside, a small crowd gathered, not in protest, but in support. Signs read, policy over performance and let the work speak. Reporters waited for a quote. Karoline didn't give one. She walked into the crowd, shook hands, hugged a woman who whispered something, and teared up. That moment, caught on a phone camera, spread faster than any press release, not because it was staged, but because it wasn't. Karoline didn't know she was being filmed. She was just there. Across the city, Warren sat in a makeup chair for another segment. The tone had shifted even there. Her producer leaned in awkwardly. They're gonna ask about the plan again. Warren sighed. I'm not endorsing it. Understood. But be prepared. The angle's different today. What angle? They want to know why Leavitt's winning Democrats over. The word hung like a bad smell. Warren didn't respond, just adjusted a curl in the mirror. On air, the interview started predictably. The host smiled too wide, the lights too hot. Senator Warren, Leavitt's plan has gained traction. Even Representative Chen called it convincing. Do you still stand by your criticism? Warren's smile didn't reach her eyes. I stand by facts, she said. We need serious dialogue, not quick-fix emotion. But isn't that what she's offering, a serious document? Well, look, anyone can write a report. That doesn't mean it's sound policy. The moment passed, but it felt flat. Back in the briefing room, Karoline stayed seated as others left. Laura Chen approached. "Some folks on my side might back this," she said quietly. "Won't say it publicly yet, but you've done something here." Karoline didn't gloat. "Then help me do more." Chen extended a hand. Karoline shook it. No cameras, no press, just a moment of quiet progress. The leak wasn't planned by Karoline's team, but it couldn't have come at a better time. Thursday evening, an anonymous source sent a 47-second audio clip to 3 political journalists. No watermark, no context, just a muffled recording of Elizabeth Warren at a private donor event in Boston 2 weeks earlier. Her voice was unmistakable. "You think these rural voters actually read policies? Please, they don't care about substance. They care about who makes them feel heard. Give them a slogan, a punchline, they eat it up." Laughter followed, but the next line lit the fuse. "These are folks who can't even navigate a basic insurance form, and we're pretending they get Leavitt's healthcare reform? Come on." By Friday morning, the clip had 3 million views. Warren's office didn't deny it. They couldn't. Instead, they called it taken out of context and blamed partisan distortion. But the damage spread. On CNN, anchors didn't hold back. She just insulted the very people she claims to fight for. Local radio in swing states picked it up. Even Warren's longtime donors issued vague statements about reassessing support. Karoline said nothing. Reporters asked, her team refused. The only quote came from a rural healthcare summit in Des Moines. "I'd rather fix problems than comment on someone else's mistakes." The line hit The Guardian, then AP, then USA Today. In D.C., Karoline's silence worked like a mirror. The more Warren spoke to douse the fire, the more out of touch she seemed. The more Karoline stayed quiet, the more people leaned in to hear her next move. In a private White House meeting, Rachel looked at Karoline, almost in disbelief. "You're not going to say anything? Not even a tweet?" Karoline shook her head. "She's said enough." Rachel leaned back, arms crossed. "It's smart, but you're really okay letting her implode?" Karoline looked up from her tablet. "This isn't about her. It's about what happens next." And what happened next moved faster than anyone predicted. That weekend, Karoline's healthcare plan passed its first vote in the House Subcommittee on Health, with 6 yes votes, including 1 Democrat and 1 independent. It wasn't law yet, but it was alive. Warren's name didn't appear in the notes. At a town hall in Sioux City, Iowa, Karoline stood before 200 people, farmers, nurses, retirees. No blazer, just a sweater, slacks, and worn sneakers. The mic crackled. "I don't care who gets the credit," she said. "I care that no farmer drives 3 hours for a doctor, that no teacher skips meds to pay rent, that no kid misses school because their clinic closed. We have the money. We've always had it. We just needed the will." Applause didn't erupt. It grew, steady, sustained. That night, Warren's fundraiser in Minneapolis was cancelled. No public reason, just an email. "We're pausing for now." Monday, the Boston Globe summed it up. "Leavitt builds while Warren burns." Warren issued a statement claiming she was deeply misunderstood and committed to dialogue. No one listened. While Warren tried to rewrite the narrative, Karoline had moved forward, and the country moved with her. Friday, the community center in Fremont, Nebraska was small. No podium, no press, just folding chairs, homemade cookies, and peeling name tags. For Karoline, this was bigger than any subcommittee vote or news cycle. She walked in quietly, a canvas tote over her shoulder, still in her sneakers. Kids ran between chairs. Someone played soft country music from a Bluetooth speaker. Mrs. Clara Thompson, a retired nurse in her 70s, took Karoline's hands. "You don't know what this means to us," she said, eyes steady. "I think I do," Karoline replied. "But I want to hear you say it." They talked for 10 minutes. No rush, no handlers. 2 women, one who'd fought to be noticed, another making sure she was. That was the real win. Not the vote, not the headlines, not the quiet endorsements from nervous moderates. It was this: real people, not pundits, believing someone was working for them. Back in DC, Warren hadn't posted in 3 days. Her team was splintering. Marcus stopped texting, an advisor quit, donors went silent. The story wasn't Leavitt versus Warren anymore. It was about what leadership looked like. Karoline never raised her voice to get there. She didn't drag Warren's name, didn't clap back online, didn't book flashy interviews. She let the work build its own spotlight. Over dinner, Rachel asked, "Did you ever think about going for the throat?" Karoline didn't hesitate. "Of course, but that's the cheap win. I'm not trying to win loud, I'm trying to win right, and I'm trying to keep winning." It wasn't arrogance, it was clarity. The country had watched a masterclass in strategy, restraint and timing, and most didn't realize it until the dust settled. When the full plan reached the House floor a month later, Karoline spoke once, brief and focused. "This is for people who stopped asking for help because they were tired of being ignored. Today, we show them they were never invisible." The room applauded, not thunderously, but genuinely. The vote closed. 231 in favor, 202 against. The room settled into a stillness that follows something earned. Outside, Karoline's car waited, engine running. A reporter asked, "Do you feel you got the last word?" Karoline looked at her. There was never a last word, just better ones. She got in, closed the door, and drove off. Because sometimes the loudest wins are the ones that don't need to be shouted. If you believe real change comes from action, not noise, and that substance outlasts spectacle, hit that subscribe button. There are more stories like this, and they deserve to be heard.